My brothers and sisters, I just love all of those progressive commercials with Dr. Rick. You know, the ones where Dr. Rick always helps the young homeowners not become like their parents. And there's a particular one that I really like, which is titled Letting Go. And it's about these young homeowners cleaning out their houses and getting rid of all of the things that they tend to accumulate. There's one guy in the commercial who's standing, Dr. Rick is standing beside a dumpster, and all of these people, one by one, come before the dumpster and make some kind of statement. And there's one guy who says, "I've been saving these crown moldings because you never know when you might need them." And Dr. Rick says, "I do, never." And he throws them out, you know. Then there's a lady that comes with all of these margarine containers, and she says, "Margarine containers are for recycling, not for holding leftovers." And Dr. Rick says, "Wow, that's a big one, people. That's a big one." And finally, there's this one where the lady holds these like bags, 2 bags full of plastic bags. And she says, "You never can have too many bags." And Dr. Nick says, "Yes, you can." It's all very humorous, but it speaks to, I think, a condition not just of young homeowners, but for everybody, especially when there is some sort of stagnation in one's life. Things begin to accumulate, and that in our hearts, in our spirit, in our mind, there can be lots of clutter that kind of clog up the works. Just like in our homes, the more things that we save because we think they'll be useful sometime in the future, just takes up space more than is useful. It really is a kind of wastefulness, because this saving is just keeping things from finding a better potential. It stultifies any kind of growth or advancement. Maybe 1 or 2 margarine cups, maybe a couple of bags, but you don't need a whole bunch. And this kind of way of living makes us become possessed by these possessions. They slow us down. They close us off from the world because there's no room for openness in our hearts and in our minds. And this is what we encounter in today's gospel with this man with an unclean spirit. In my process of moving, I've been pulling out all my clutter. And my house is terribly unclean as a result of it. Clutter makes things unclean, no matter how organized you might keep it. And this man with this unclean spirit comes before Jesus. And because he's so possessed of this clutter, he feels threatened by the freedom that Jesus offers him, by the freedom that might come by letting go of the clutter. He says, "What do you have to do with us?" And you notice that it's a person speaking with a plural pronoun. He's all cluttered. He's divided. He's not whole. And he is all this more divided when he recognizes Jesus as Jesus of Nazareth. But when he comes to acknowledge him as the Son of God, he begins to say, he then says, "I know who you are. He's presenting himself before the Lord. There is this threat, this challenge from Jesus, but also this desire to be free. And Jesus, in all his mercy and compassion, says this: quiet, come out of him. For this is what Jesus always does. Jesus always calls us forth. Jesus calls the good parts forth, and sometimes it's hard to come out because of all the clutter. But sometimes Jesus calls the clutter out first so that we might be free. And notice the tension, the convulsion when this begins to happen. When the love of God begins to assert itself against all our clutter, against all our possessions. You know the book of Revelation at the end of the Bible? There's all kinds of wars and conflicts and all these global conflagrations. I think that this book is a description of the whole world, the whole universe, becoming free of its clutter. It's not an easy thing, but it is the way to freedom. It is the way to unity. It is the way to peace. What kind of clutter might you have in your own hearts and in your own minds? I'm not worried about your margin containers or about how many bags you have. But what I am concerned about is the clutter in all our hearts and in all our minds. What things are there that prevent you from opening, from transcending, from becoming more free? Could it be a terrible decision, at least in your judgment, that you made in the past, that you wish you never had made that decision, although perhaps at that time it was the best decision? Are there any other kinds of regrets? Were there some words or things that happened to you that kind of close you off so that you might be more protected as you move on into the future, to the things that might happen? All of these things we can be free of, and Jesus can free us of them. I don't know if this happens to you, but this happens to me sometimes in prayer. That when I'm praying, sometimes there is this memory from my past. And it could be like this insignificant memory, like, why did I think of this? And it sometimes is a memory of something bothersome. And all of a sudden, I find myself, when I'm praying, like dwelling on this for a little while, and then it goes away. Or sometimes, and more often, it is like these overwhelming senses of frustration that I get when I pray. And it's not like I'm looking for them, but they just come. And I think that they're more than just distractions. I think it's the experience of God moving the clutter out of me. That there are all of these little things that I've kind of packed away someplace. that keep me from being free. Because, clutter is, accumulative. You just don't go to a pile of clutter and bring it in. You kind of build it a little at a time until all of a sudden you have too much. And this, I think, happens in our minds and hearts as well. And so, little by little, Jesus is going in there and saying, you don't need this. You don't need this. And when I'm praying and this is happening, as it's leaving, I notice it. And that's why I get these feelings and these experiences. Because Jesus is saying to the clutter that I'm possessed by, come out. So that the more I pray, the less clutter I have, and more free I become. That's presuming I'm not putting in more clutter faster than Jesus is taking them out. And this personal experience also then builds to more institutional, more communal experiences as well. What kind of clutter might exist in the two communities of Region 14 that prevent us from being free, that prevent us from growing together, that prevent us from noticing all of our similarities, all of our commonalities, especially in our faith? What kind of clutter blinds us to this great reality? These are the things that Jesus can free us of. With the man, it was rather drastic. And sometimes something drastic may be necessary. But at times, or most times, it's little by little. And hopefully the freeing happens faster than the cluttering. When we celebrate the Mass every Sunday, regardless of where we are one church. We celebrate one sacrifice of Christ. And that one sacrifice of Christ gives us the one gift of peace that can lead to reconciliation. This is the gift that Jesus offers to us. This is the gift that makes us church. And this gift of church is what can heal the world. So bring your clutter before Jesus and ask Jesus to take it away. It won't be free. It won't be easy. It may not be free. But we will indeed become like our parent, the loving Father of God.